Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar. The title of this webinar is Risk and Quality Management, and our presenter today is Carol Spears. I know a number of you online tuned into Carol's presentation from last week, and this is another section of the series that Carol is presenting for us. Carol started teaching people how to use computers and has a love of technology and all things digital. Through being a team member of a technology project, she learned the value of project management and went on to pass exams to ensure her own projects ran smoothly and delivered on time and to budget. She enjoys teaching project management as well as the practical application. She has worked in the IT, banking and electricity industries both in New Zealand and in the UK. Her goal for course attendees is to provide focused practical tools to use immediately. Carol's experience spans more than 25 years of project and leadership roles in various organisations, large and small, private entities and government agencies. She has been a manager, team leader and corporate trainer who enjoys seeing the change in skills and knowledge of her course participants. She has trained in many topics for both public and leadership clients, and she has been a project management manager for business change, IT, health and safety and leadership development and initiatives. So for those of you who are online, as you would no doubt be aware, if you have any questions at all throughout this presentation, please pop them into the Q&A box in your Slido link, and I'll now hand you over to Carol.
Thank you so much, tēnā koutou katoa. So good to see you again. If you can see me, that's great. I can't tell who's here, but let's get into today's topic. It's quite a big one. There's quite a lot to learn and understand. This is version 2 of our modules. So risk and quality management, talking about that. So risk planning starts early. It starts with a joke. Let's have a dad joke, shall we? Why did the project manager bring a ladder to the bar? Now, warning, this is pretty sad. This is, I think I might have used ChatGPT to come up with a question here. Why did the project manager bring a ladder to the bar? Because the risk was high and they needed to mitigate it. There you go. I told you it was bad. So there we go. If you use ChatGPT for jokes, you're bound to get something terrible. So mitigate that risk. All right, let's have a look at it. What do you think about each of these? Is it a risk or an issue? So a lot of people get confused between the differences, risk and an issue. They are actually different. Some people do use the words interchangeably. So watch out for that. So number one, a supplier might is a key word. They might have a manufacturing delay which cause a delivery delay to you. What do you think? Risk or an issue? Give you a minute to think about that one. Number two, due to the late delivery of the project timeline, the project timeline has been affected. So hopefully you got this right. The answers, of course, a key supplier might, so that could be a risk. So if you can plan ahead for it, that is your risk. And you would have some actions in place, some mitigations perhaps in place. Due to the late delivery, the project timeline has been affected. That's actually an issue. So something's actually happened. It's occurring now. And the issue can't be ignored. You need to act on it now. So the difference is risk, you might be able to anticipate and plan ahead for it. But an issue, of course, is something that's happening right now. So that's the kind of the distinction that you need to make. And of course, risks and issues pop up. They can pop up as early in the planning stages, certainly in the doing part of the project, and even at close as well. You can have risks and issues popping up there. So risks and issues pop up all the time. A good way is to manage them is to keep track of them, list them all out, and I'll show you how to do that. So risks are uncertain. And if it occurs, of course, it could have a positive effect on a project. So there is a thing called positive risk. So if something happens, you might anticipate more sales of the product or whatever it is you're doing, or get more customer satisfaction. So that could be a positive outcome. Most of us, of course, think about the negative risks or negative impact. So if something goes wrong, we lose a key supplier or we lose a key staff member on a project, then that's generally classed as a negative risk and something needs to be done about it. So risks, of course, as you can see there, impact basically every aspect of the project, scope, schedule, cost, all the rest of it, but also the deliverables. So is the deliverable good quality? That could be a risk that you might be facing as well. So as it says there, risk management involves identifying, analyze, planning, but I also kind of want to do a bit of a loop on that one. It really means about just checking in all the time. So you should be checking on your risks at least monthly. For smaller projects, it might be fortnightly. So making sure that you've got the most up-to-date risk register information and up-to-date mitigation and cost implications if the risks were come to fruition. So keep everything up to date. I know it's a bit of a mission for a project with so many moving parts, but the risk plan is really vital to the project manager. All right, so an issue, of course, problem that's already occurred. So your risks, of course, can turn into issues. They could be bigger than what you thought. They could certainly impact lots more people. So yeah, keep an eye on those risks. If they do turn into issues, you need to deal with it straight away. So usually what I do is have a thing called a RAID log, R-A-I-D. I think I might have mentioned this. So RAID is just an Excel spreadsheet, just keeps everything in one place. R for requirements, A for actions, I for issues, and D for decisions. But you can put your risks in there as well. So yeah, requirements or risks, whichever one you want to do there. So RAID log, really helpful to keep a track on all of that. So yeah, this circular argument, you can sort of talk about identifying, and one of the best ways to do this is, I think we talked about it last time, was to get a group of people together into a room. It could be, or virtually, get them together and think about, so what could go wrong with this project? Just get all points of view, get people to kind of share their thoughts and experiences so that you can identify all types of risks. So then I just kind of, put them on a whiteboard, use the sticky notes if you want to do that, use a virtual whiteboard. And the idea is just to get all those ideas out and then start to categorize them. So the analysis, I'll show you that in a moment. The analysis can take a little while, but again, and this looks like science, but actually it's not. It's really just, working through a process, and everyone's sort of reasonably consistent with the analysis, and I'll show you the tools for that in a moment. And then, of course, it's a matter of thinking up, so if this risk was to happen, what could we do? Or could we prevent the risk? Could we put some mitigation in place, or could we avoid the risk in some way? So that response could be a number of different things. Mostly, as project managers, we do mitigation, but you could use other tools and mechanisms. I'll talk you through those in a moment. And then, of course, it's putting it all into place, the implementation, the doing thing, and then continuous risk management. So yeah, as I mentioned, you do need to come back to the risk register and have a look. Is it still relevant? Is something dropped off? Do you need to add something more on? Quite frequently, if you've got a number of risks and you've analysed them and they turn out to be reasonably high, then it's your duty, perhaps as a project manager, is to escalate those. So shove them up top. So senior manager needs to know about those. Project sponsor needs to know about them. It could be that within your organisation, you actually have a person that's called the risk manager. It may be part of their job or part of the corporate services area, where people have to look after the risks of all of the organisation. And if there's a particular project risk that could impact, let's say, reputational damage of the organisation, then somebody needs to know and have that on the major company register. So some project risks would need to filter up. Not all project risks, having said that. So some project risks you'll be able to handle, and the scoring and the analysis of it, you can manage yourself. All right, so this, again, you might have seen this in the health and safety world, very similar. And this is a risk matrix. And the idea is that you kind of think about your risks, as I said, brainstorm all that, and then use some sort of table like this. I'm not saying you have to use this one, but this is a very generic example. And the idea is to try and get everyone to agree which likelihood is it likely to be and which consequence is it likely to be. So you can decide amongst your team as to whether you think it falls into the green, the low category, the medium, or the very high, etc. So the idea here with this one is this is a matrix which is all good. However, you should, and most organisations would have it, hopefully, as the associated document with this one. So I call it a risk dictionary. And what I mean by that is let's talk about what does almost certain mean. So does that mean 80% chance, or does it mean actually 100% chance? Or what does likely mean? Is that greater than 50 and less than 80% chance? So again, there might be some parameters and some explanation that would be really useful to have to understand all of these criteria. So likelihood and consequence. If you can imagine I used to work in the nuclear industry in the UK, severe, if you look over to the far right, the severe was deaths, right? So death in service or death of the community or whatever it is. So Chernobyl type event, right? So you can imagine that severe was life-changing and life-threatening. Whereas some other organisations, that could be something else. So it could be some sort of risk to reputation or some sort of financial loss. So again, the categories of minor, moderate, significant, etc., they would all need to be listed down what they think is relevant for the organisation. Certainly when I worked here in the electricity industry here in New Zealand, we had that very clear and it was itemised out. So there wasn't an element of guessing in terms of what those categories meant. So it was really helpful to guide your thinking about whether you are calling an item in the very high. So you've got the almost certain and severe. And so we could agree on what that meant. So do have a look around in your organisation. You may have a table similar to this. Some of them have numbers on. That's cool. Some of them just have the colours. But there should be something around that you could use like this with the dictionary, with the explanation to go with it. So you might need to modify that if there's not a standard one, or create one yourself. So that's typically the analysis. And for each risk, you should have an initial score. So let's say it's a medium score, so the yellow. So then you'd obviously tailor your responses to those categories. So some of the low things, there might only be one or two things that you need to do in order to minimise the consequence or the likelihood of that thing happening. Of course, if it's in the darker orange or the bright orange there, the high or the very high, you're going to need to do a lot more, and you're going to need to keep your eye on those risks as you're going through. So the risk categories can change. So the idea here is that you do that analysis and then you kind of plan out what you're going to do. Negative risk, of course, you can treat it in several different ways. So avoid it. Can you plan around it? Could you work on something different? Could you eliminate it in some way, or just not do that thing, just avoid it entirely? Mitigation, that's the next one. That's pretty much what we've been talking about, what most project managers do. What could they do to change or modify the impact or consequence if it was to happen? Transfer, again, that's used quite widely in the construction industry. So you might buy insurance, as is typical when commercial buildings are being built. So you'll probably know about that more than me. But the idea is that you transfer over to an insurance company and you buy some sort of fire and risks type insurance for the construction phase of the building. So quite common. And I think in Auckland there was a classic case there when I think it was the conference centre or the main centre there that they were building caught fire. And so there's obviously insurance that they could carry on with a new source of funding. Escalating, so obviously that's the idea that you inform the sponsor and just keep everyone informed. Maybe there's some other people that need to know about it. Maybe it's outside of your scope to be able to fix. So you might want to just check in with others. If you've got a program manager, if you've got a project sponsor, check in with those people. Can they offer any suggestions about what to do with a negative risk that you can't deal with? And lucky last is the accept. Sometimes we just have to accept that there is a risk. There's not much we can do about it. We could perhaps take some minor precautions, but there's really not much we can do. So sometimes we just have to accept that there's a risk, know that it's there, and just keep monitoring to see whether it actually does come to fruition. So those are kind of the typical ways that we would treat risk, different ways. But mostly it's mitigation, as I said. So let's have a look at how we go about that. This is a fairly straightforward risk register. Again, I'd probably just have this in Excel. Type the risk. You might want to put some explanation about it. Then another heading that you might want to put in there is who's looking after that. So is it always the project manager that's kind of got this top of mind, or is it one of the team members, one of the subject matter experts, one of the technical experts? So again, you might want to have a risk owner in there. So if you need to, share the blame, share the responsibility with the team. So keep them in mind if you're putting in a risk owner. The likelihood and consequence, you'd get that from that table that you kind of had a look at there. And then we call it the raw score. So that's the first scoring mechanism. I'll just go back to that one as an example. So the score, so the first score, let's say, for example, initially we think there's quite a high likelihood of this thing happening, and we think it could have quite major consequence. So it could call the project to a halt. So we've classed that as likely and major, so we class that as very high, and so we call that our first or our initial raw score item in there. Then we'd list down 2 or 3, 4 mitigation activities, what sort of things we'd do if this was to happen, or how we can eliminate some of these things. And then it's got a thing called residual risk score, and the idea here is to have a think. Again, you'll use your people to kind of work through this, is to say, if we've got all those mitigations in place, is it still likely to occur? Maybe it goes down to possible. Let's hope so. If it was to occur, because we've got all these things in place, can we pop it down to significant, or does it stay at major? In any case, if it goes down to possible and we're still at major, we're going from very high down to high. So that's a good score, right? It's still a concern and we can't ignore it. But the idea is we've got it down from the bright red to that sort of orangey, dark orange color. That may not be possible all the time, but that's kind of the idea with this thing called residual risk score. So after your treatments, after your planning, after your activities in here, can you get your raw score down to whatever's left? It may not be possible, but it's a good idea to have a think about that. The next heading on this table is the cost. Is there a cost of mitigation? So, for example, we talked about insurance for the construction of a building. What is the cost of that insurance? That backup, that safety guard for building construction. So again, some of the risks, some of the activities that you might have, the mitigations for the risks, may have a cost involved. So think about that if there's a cost. Not always a cost, but sometimes there could be a cost. So it's a good idea to track all that as well. So risk planning, again, this is the spreadsheet or the table that I'd keep up to date. Some things will drop off. You might want to have columns like, is it still active or is it retired? Those types of things. So again, you could add on whatever headings you want and make it your own. So I think it's quite good to share that risk plan and certainly talk about the mitigation. Has it worked? At the end of the project, you'd kind of go back and say, well, we had all these mitigations in place and we did all that stuff, but did any of it work? Did it actually alleviate the problem? Did it minimize the impact? All that type of stuff. So good to go back at the end of the project, kind of do your lessons learned activity and kind of figure out, well, did that work? It's really useful for the next project manager that's coming along, or even you, if you have to run a similar project. So would it be helpful to kind of know what worked and what didn't work? So that lessons learned at the end would be super useful. All right, so that's risk. So risk, of course, comes with all sorts of interesting things associated with it, but do keep it up to date. Do make sure that you plan for it and you keep it top of mind as you're doing your reporting as well. So certainly your reporting, you'd need to report on any new risks or any change in category of those risks. So you can have a look on Google's probably got a list of really readily available risk categories. There's obviously environmental, political, all the pestle type ones as well. So you might want to kind of put them into categories if that helps you kind of sort them out. So the second part of this talk today is about quality. Quality is really hard to teach. So because each project is so different. And certainly I've worked on projects and been a project manager where there is no standard for quality. So we just had to make it up and decide for ourselves, what does good look like? What does acceptable look like? What are the users going to use for this thing? Does it actually work and all that sort of stuff? So quality can be quite a tricky one to kind of think about there. We've got a couple of pictures there. It says here, quality isn't a phase, it's a mindset and a practice. And that's similar to the risk thing. I don't know if you recognise that ship. That's the Costa Concordia that smashed into some rocks on a little island. And it was a complete disaster because people died and they got fined and all that sort of stuff. So was there a quality aspect or a risk aspect undertaken at that time? Possibly, but it wasn't well followed. So obviously cost that company huge amounts of money and getting that thing refloated. And I think they've scrapped it in the end. But the quality aspect was that, they didn't follow their own procedures. They took shortcuts and things like that. So they didn't follow what they should have done. And the second picture there is it's a bit of a funny one. You probably don't see it these days. I was sitting next to a colleague and their computer actually caught on fire. So we actually had smoke and a little flame come out. It didn't look like that one, but it was bad. And so the quality aspect is you kind of think about quality. Should it be checked at the end or should it be built in? So should there have been safety guards in place? Or some sort of mechanism that machine didn't catch on fire at their desk. So it was quite a dramatic moment in the office and hopefully it doesn't happen too often now, but obviously things just overheated and there was smoke and it wasn't a good look. So yeah, it says quality isn't extra work, it's the smart work, and I totally agree with that. So checking things before they go out, or double checking, getting somebody else, getting fresh set of eyes to check things. Maybe we wouldn't have had those sorts of accidents and disasters. So with your quality planning, again, this is something that the project manager needs to undertake with the help of others. It says there, first of all, to define what is the quality expectation. So what are people expecting this? If we have a laptop or we have a computer or desktop tower, how long is that supposed to last? Is it a 5-year item? Is it a 10-year item? What is the quality definition? What's the reliability? What's the uptime? And all those types of things. So your definitions, you'll need to work those out before you start. Sometimes they might need a bit of altering as time goes on, but define, first of all, what you think the quality aspects might be. Certainly I've used many checklists so that as I'm going through and doing that managed quality thing, as you're working through the project, I've altered and modified the checklist as I'm going, just because I want to be more thorough, or I want to add some more things in, or there's things that came up as an error or didn't work well. I need to make those changes. So the managed quality is the biggest bubble on the screen, and the idea here is this is where the heavy duty lifting is done. So making sure that your quality aspects are checked. If you're in the software development world, of course, you generally have what they call testers. So people would test out software and do several iterations of those tests. So that managing of quality and checking and all those types of things, error reduction is all done, very defined process. So the monitor and adjust, obviously if the quality thing's not working out, if things are breaking all the time, or it's not sturdy enough, or something's gone wrong, then we need to monitor and adjust and make some changes to our activities so that we can make sure that we do meet the definition of our quality statement. So quality can be quite an arduous task because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So, and you might need to adjust the quality as you're going if you're doing a sort of an agile project. So feel free to make those adjustments, check in with people. The other thing is that it could be a time, I haven't seen it myself, but you could see a time where the quality checking goes over the top. There's too much, right? So the endless checking and you never get anything delivered. So watch out for that as well, that it's proportionate to the thing that you're delivering. So is it going to meet the needs? Is it fit for purpose? Does it stand up to the test of time that you need it to, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to kind of weigh up what's the cost of quality versus the on-time delivery. So remember, we talked briefly about the triangle, about making sure that we meet what we need to meet, but don't over or gold plate something. All right, so planning and managing expectations. So we do need to define quality. We need to kind of check. always think the people that own those decisions to invest in the project, they've got certain expectations, right? So if they've spent money developing this thing, they have certain expectations about what they want as a result. So what is the deliverable? What shape and color and size is it going to be? And is it supposed to last, 20 years, 30 years or whatever? And then the people who use the deliverable, use that thing that you've created, they have different expectations. So it may be that they're more thinking about the usability, or what else can it do, or how can they adapt it. So they'll have different expectations. So I really think there's probably more groups, but those were the two that sprung to mind. The ones that pay the money, the investors or the sponsor, they've certainly got an expectation, and their criteria, of course, is on time, on cost. But the people that are using it, I guess it's more about usability and is it going to meet my needs and does it solve a problem? So again, coming at the quality question from different aspects. And as a project manager, you kind of need to balance each of those different things. It can be quite a tricky balance. All right. So with some of the quality things that you could imagine, let's say, so recently I had I'm laughing because it was just horrendous. I had some bathroom renovations done at home, right? So you can imagine that plumbing, electrical, the building works all had to be signed off. So there's very clear quality expectations. All of those are very codified, right? So you can look up the building regs, you can look up all the plumbing regs and all that sort of stuff, all the electrical things. So you can tick those off, and that's generally what the council inspectors come and do. They have a checklist. Has it done this? Has it got that? All the rest of it. And certainly they came throughout the project to kind of check at different times. So very codified, very structured, and so very easy to use. As it says there, use precedents or templates. So what is codified? What's available that you could use, that you could adapt perhaps, that you could work on from, perhaps a previous project, or if something's available in the public domain. Also, you could get into the end user expert review and peers having a look at things as well. So could they spend, I don't know, half a day kind of checking through this thing that you've created? Is it going to do the job? Is it meeting expectations? What other ideas have they got? Don't leave that to the end, because you might not have budget or time to be able to make those fixes, but make sure you've involved them as much as you can early on. One of the documents that talks about there is the acceptance criteria. And this, again, is a good quality checklist. So what does done look like? What does good look like? What is going to be acceptable for the end person to sign off? So if they need it to be a certain size, shape and colour, have you actually done that? So what is the acceptance criteria? It's good to think about these things early on when you're doing a project plan, so that you can work towards getting things ticked off efficiently. Acceptance criteria can change, of course, but the idea is to, work towards whatever is agreed for that end product. Industry standards, I've talked about those. Again, there may not be industry standards if you're this is a very unique product. You may not have some industry standards to look at, but see if there are some. There could be some from overseas that you could adapt for New Zealand conditions. So again, you might have industry standards that you have to work towards, and sometimes you won't. Regulations and company policy could be another area that you look at as a result of doing similar types of projects over many years. You might have some company policy or guidelines or processes that you can use to check as, have you delivered this in a quality way, in the usual way that the company does. So again, check in with seniors or other project managers. They might be able to point you to the right documents there. And always good to get end users, testers, focus groups as well could be quite useful. I know that Fonterra, for example, when they're testing out new food products, they will have, they come into their sensory lab in Palmerston North, and they come in there and test out different flavours of cheese and whatever else. So they have a very structured way of testing and checking. Their focus groups are really well trained in the products that they serve. So there can be some, that's obviously a really large company, but there can be some really good ways of checking and testing. I know that local councils here around Wellington, they do have some, focus groups, particularly a couple of years ago when they were putting out a new plan. So their long-term plan. So they do get sort of people in to talk about that. All right. Okay. So lots of different ways we can manage quality. And I think this guy's got a smiley face, but the idea is that, keep checking. Don't leave it to the end. Make sure that you've got a regular session to check all that. And as it says here, monitor and adjust. So make sure you know what good looks like or what does acceptable look like. So it's really the project that's responsible for all of this, and certainly the reporting on quality as well. It can be kind of a dull topic, but the idea is that, you kind of get ahead of the game basically, and just make sure that, everyone's expectations are managed well. Checklist, I've talked about that, so I think that's great. Keep your records. If somebody's agreed to a change, I'd put that in my RAID log, those decisions. So, after a meeting with, 20 users, we decided blah, 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 and this is the reason for it. So I'd keep all that just so that you can go back on your records later on. Really useful. Ensure the team knows what looks good. And what I mean by that is in your head, you might have some ideas about how you want the quality to be or what you want the thing to look like. Just make sure that you explain it to others. This can cause lots of problems later on when it comes in to be a bit of a surprise. Here's the thing that you got and it wasn't exactly what you were expecting. So just make sure that you're working with others and that they're well on top of what the checklist is, what the acceptance criteria is, again, so that they're not over-engineering stuff as well. So you can spend too much time trying to get the perfect thing. Maybe that's not what the customer wants. It says there, if there's a deviation, so if there's a change, we typically use in project management world a thing called a change request. And the idea is that we list down, hey, this is a good suggestion, this is what we think should happen, or this is how it should be fixed. And generally, the project manager has a look at that idea. Usually it's quite a formal change request document. And then they go ahead and do some analysis. So how much is that going to cost? Would it impact the time? Or any other aspect of the resource uses or budget and all that sort of stuff. So what is the impact of making this change? So the idea is that you kind of choose the changes that you can do easily, but then go up to either a thing called a change control board or the steering committee or the sponsor and say, hey, look, we've had this brilliant idea. I've worked it all out. This is what it's going to cost. This is how much time it's going to add. Do you want to go ahead? And again, I'd put that in my RAID log to say, yep, that change was approved or declined. And these are the reasons why. So you're not having to do that analysis every time. So again, keep a record of what's been approved so that at the end of the project, when somebody says, oh, how come you spent 20,000 more than what we thought? And actually, we had some changes approved, and here's the dates and times and dates and all the stuff that was approved. So you've got a sort of a backup record of that. So quite a lot to do with the old quality world. So yeah, it's an area that some people get right into. Some people can spend quite a lot of time on. But my suggestion is to match the quality expectations of your sponsor and the people that you're working with, so that you can kind of match the level of interest and the level of activities you need to do. So it is one aspect of project management, but quite an important one, obviously, as you can think of. But the idea is that you don't over-engineer it, I guess is what I'm trying to say there. All right, let's have I thought we'd make this a little bit more interactive because I think that's kind of fun. So we're going to have a bit of a quiz on the go here. So hopefully in your whatever it is you're viewing it in, your Slido, is that right? There should be a link there. Hopefully you've got a link to a thing called Padlet. You do not need to log on to Padlet, so that's a good thing. And so what we need to do is to have a look at Padlet, and the idea is that you have a look at all of the different categories that I've got on the titles there, and then move the purple ones under the heading that might belong to that heading. So I'm going to stop sharing. So let's see if we can get that link up and running. So hopefully you've got the Padlet. So just checking in that you can see the Padlet. And the idea is you click and drag onto the tiles and move them under the heading. So you can use your best judgment as to whether they fit under one or more of those headings. Okay, let me know if you haven't got the Padlet. You shouldn't have to log in. You just use the link and you should be able to move those tiles around, and you can just go for it anytime you're ready.
Thank you, Carol. If a couple of our members who are online, if you're able to please just pop in the chat box just to confirm you are able to access that Padlet link, or please let us know if you're not able to. We just need to ensure that the link is working. Okay, Carol, I'm not receiving any messages at all about the link.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, shall we try and do it a different way then? So what I can do is I can present the Padlet on my screen, and maybe if the members can direct me as to where they would like the link to go.
Okay, I've just had a couple of questions. A couple of people come through. Somebody is saying they can't see anything on their side, but somebody else, there's a couple of people who have saying they can open and move them about. Somebody's said that they can see them, but they're unable to move them.
Oh.
Yeah, the link is accessible but can't move items.
Okay.
A couple of other people have said, yes, it is working. It's a little bit weird. So some people everyone can see it.
Yeah.
Some people are able to move the tiles and some are not. So
okay.
I'm not quite sure.
Let's so hopefully you can see my screen now. So are you Jenny, can you just check, are you looking at my screen? Yeah, there we go. All right. So let's have a look at this one. Let's take all right, so the idea is each of these little statements, you can see them here and I can move them about. And the idea is that they can fit under some of these headings. So measuring and monitoring costs, obviously, is all about sort of checking what's going on as the project is running. External failure is typically when things like, maybe you've released the product or it's gone out, and then you've got to make some corrections, or there's maybe a product recall, which would be terrible, of course. So something's gone wrong after you've released it. So that's kind of the idea with that one. So what do you think? Let's have a look. Shall we go for... let's have a look. The suppliers are rated according to on-time delivery. So where do you think that go? Under prevention? Not likely. Internal failure? No, not likely. External? No. Measuring and monitoring. So this one here, the suppliers are rated according to on-time delivery. So this is like monitoring and checking as things are going. So we can rate our suppliers. Hopefully you agree with that. We talked about if the products are returned after being sold, that's kind of a cost of failure. So external failure. External just means external to the project. So if the products are returned after being sold, the cost of repair or service done by the company, that's going to be a massive cost. Obviously, if things have gone out, they're not quite right and they need to be fixed. So that's quite a good example of cost of quality there. Similarly, I think we've got one about complaints. So imagine, if you will, that you're getting a number of complaints for all work and costs associated with handling customer complaints. So you can imagine if there's a call center or something like that that needs to work on fixing those things. So that's, again, if it's released, it's called an external failure. Internal failure, of course, this is where something's gone wrong, correcting defects before the customer receives. So rework is done to make corrections. So this is the most common one, right? So something's gone wrong in testing, or something's gone wrong when you've gone to check it, or it hasn't met your quality criteria, or it hasn't, you haven't got your checklist signed off there, your acceptance criteria wasn't done. So this is related to finding correcting before things go out. And the failure analysis one, as you can imagine here, to work out the reasons for the product or service failure. So all sorts of things you could use there: root cause analysis, Ishikawa diagram, all sorts of things like that. So working out the reasons for the product failure. So internally within the project, you would try and do these things as early on when you've started to identify your project going off the rails. So the prevention one is... the project team creates a list of specifications for incoming materials. So again, we're preventing failure through just checking that we're getting the right materials to begin with, we're getting the right stuff that we ordered, so that we can, do our work as we need to. And lucky last, subject matter expert creates a requirement regarding the reliability. So this is a prevention. This is a requirement in testing that we could check: is it reliable? Can it do the right thing? Can it show on the screen and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of where we're at with prevention type costs, putting those up front. All right, so how did we go with that exercise? Hopefully you had a bit of fun if you were able to get into the Padlet and have a bit of a play with it. Hopefully you came up with something similar. Let me show you on my screen well, I'm going to say it's the model answer. You can decide for yourself whether you've got the right thing there. So let me just present this screen. So you can decide for yourself if you agree or disagree. But this is kind of what I had there as the cost of quality. So quality can, bite you in the bum in terms of, having to spend a lot of money to fix things up, particularly if it goes out, is external. So the project has delivered whatever it said it was going to deliver, and then it has to be recalled, or there's some fault with it, or there's some fix that needs to happen. So yeah, it can be quite costly. And I'm sure you've heard of product recalls from time to time. So you know that there's, reputational damage and risk if the quality is not great. Any questions on that? Hopefully you can get a bit of a play. What I will do is I will send you a link, and if you want to play with that Padlet, feel free to sort of move those around and play with those. Just kind of a fun thing to have a look at and practice with every now and again. All right, finally, so end with a joke again. Is this any better? Let's have a look. What's your risk mitigation plan, says the project manager. The team member says, let's hope for the best. The project manager says, great. And what's the contingency plan? And the team member says, panic. Oh, there we go. Finishing for the day on a kind of a joke. So let me see if we can put this into your chat area there. After talking about risk and talking about quality, what's one thing that's kind of resonating for you at the moment? One thing that you might want to do for on your current project or your next project to improve your quality? What do you think you might want to do? If you can put that in the chat, that'll be great. It's kind of interesting that I'm showing a ship there. I don't know if you remember this ship. This was the Ruby Princess. And what happened here is they did do some risk analysis, but clearly not enough. This is the ship that got docked at Sydney in Australia, and they let off around about 2,700 passengers, and a lot of them had COVID. And of course, it was in the early days of the COVID pandemic, and a lot of those people went on and infected many, many people around New South Wales and the rest of Australia, because they basically all got on buses and trains and planes and just spread the virus quite widely through Australia. There was actually a public inquiry. There was many sort of finger-pointing activities going on about the risk was not assessed correctly. And so this is a picture of the folks leaving the ship, which they shouldn't have. And so yeah, a bit of a worry when it comes to risk and quality checking. So any questions coming through? Is there? I can't see them on my chat, so hopefully you've got them somewhere there. Jenny, are you able to? No questions at the moment. Okay, great. All right, thank you. All right, so my suggestion to you is I'll send you some files, and my suggestion to you is do some reading on quality and think about how you might improve quality. If you build it in early and plan for it early, then it should be just a normal activity that you would do in your project. Don't leave it to the end, as I've said several times. Make sure that you're checking as you go along. You don't want those nasty surprises, getting something that you that you didn't expect, or something that's not going to meet the needs of the client. So make sure that you build that in on a regular basis and do that checking. One of the keys, as I mentioned, was to certainly set it up for success. So make sure you've got your quality criteria well organised at the beginning. Check with your own company to see whether they've got quality standards or guidelines. Quite often it's the case that you would have standards for documents. So I know that a lot of the organisations I've worked with, they have a style guide. So you must use this font and you must use this logo in this way. So they'd be quite specific about how you lay things out on a letter, for example, or documents to clients. So that's an example of a quality standard, right? So it's an in-house quality standard. This is how you want to have the communications from the company going out. So that's a very common example of a template or a style guide that you would use. So yeah, what's one thing that you'd do next on your project to improve quality? Have a think about that. It could be just as simple as planning ahead, or checking in with others, or checking what standards are available. So one of the things that says capture or document a definition of what quality means for the project. Yeah, that's a good one, actually. Yeah. What does it mean for the project? And again, I think with that comment, I think you need to share that as well. Once you've captured it and documented it, make sure everyone's well aware of it. And certainly it's been the case when I've worked on projects, new people come and join the project halfway through or towards the end or whatever, and you forget that part of their induction is into the project, and their induction into the project is to make sure that they understand this is the quality standards we're working to, this is the acceptance criteria, and this is what our quality actually means for this project. So don't forget to do that. If new people join, make sure they're well aware of what's expected. All right, we've got our final session on the 15th of May. We're talking about time and cost, talking about deadlines and budgets, staying on track, talking about a little bit about a visual for your project. I'm pretty much a fan of the Kanban board. I do like a good Gantt chart as well. I'll talk you through those. Do you need both? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And what to do when it's not on track. So let's have a look at that for the 15th of May. If you've got any questions prior to that, or as a result of doing today's workshop, do let me know, let Jenny know, and she can pass them on to me, and we'll get those answered. Hopefully, can you just let me know as well, did you get the templates from last time? So I think I sent you 3. Just let me know if you got those, and I will send today's ones through to Jenny, and you can have a play with them, modify them, make them your own, make it relevant and correct for you. Do check that your company doesn't already have some of these things, because they may well do, and they may prefer that you use the in-house ones. So I'll send you mine, you can use them, but do check. You might have your own company ones as well. Is there any final comments, Jenny? Has anyone said yes, they've got the templates, or no, they haven't, or any comments coming through?
Yeah, doesn't look like there are any other questions that have come through. So thank you so much, Carol, for your presentation today, and thank you to everybody for joining us. As Carol said, if you have any questions that you think of after the session finishes, please flick them through to me and I'll forward them on to Carol for responding back to you. So thank you once again for everybody, and thank you, Carol.
Okay, we'll see you. Bye.